Good evening and welcome to Chicago Tonight on this Monday, February 11th.
This is a question of whether the law was followed.
The challengers to Jason Van Dyke's sentencing join us to discuss why they think the ex-officer should be re-sentenced.
The beauty of early voting is you can vote when and where you want.
Early voting for February 26 city elections is now available in all 50 Chicago wards. As Governor Pritzker prepares for his first budget address, legislative leaders weigh in on the billion-dollar problems facing the state. Will superstar free agent Manny Machado wind up in a White Sox uniform? A look ahead of the White Sox season with broadcaster Jason Benetti.
Chicago became a leader in this movement of streamlined design.
A look at Chicago's historical influence on an enduring design style, plus overlooked graphic art made by African-American designers. And stories of displacement and resilience in a photography exhibit on refugees in America. We meet the photographer and one of the subjects. All that and more next on Chicago Tonight. Thanks for joining us. I'm Phil Ponce. A nightmare evening commute for Lakeshore Drive motorists. Eddie Aruza has that story and more of what's making news in Chicago tonight. Eddie.
Phil, the northbound lanes of the drive from Monroe to Grand Avenue will remain closed through at least tomorrow afternoon. That's the word tonight from the Chicago Department of Transportation as crews try to shore up a section of the bridge over the Chicago River. Around 10 this morning, CDOT crews discovered a crack in a steel beam that caused a drop in the roadway. The city says the recent extreme cold may have caused the fracture to the beam. Officials say they received no reports of any injuries or vehicle damage, and while CDOT says there's no fear of a collapse, they hope to have a temporary fix in place by rush hour tomorrow evening. The closure caused massive backups in both directions of Lakeshore Drive today, just north of Grant Park, even though the southbound lanes remain open. Motorists are being advised to avoid the area through tomorrow. CDOT says it will provide updates throughout the day about when northbound lanes might reopen. Well, 10 more Chicago men convicted of drug-related crimes were exonerated today. All were found to be framed by former Chicago Police Sergeant Ronald Watts. The mass exoneration brought to nearly 60 the number of men, all African-American, who were wrongfully convicted based on fabricated evidence by Watts and officers in a corrupt tactical unit. The arrests and convictions occurred during a more than 10-year period beginning in 2002. Watts was convicted in 2012 after trying to shake down what turned out to be an FBI informant. He served 22 months in prison and now lives in Las Vegas. Nearly 3 dozen more cases tied to Watts and officers who served under him are under review. Up until today, Ida B. Wells' name was mainly associated with a now demolished public housing development in Bronzeville. That's no longer the case.
1.
This morning, the groundbreaking investigative reporter and activist became the first black woman to have a Chicago street named after her. What was formerly Congress Parkway between Grant Park and the Eisenhower Expressway is now Ida B. Wells Way. The roadway's renaming took place at the Harold Washington Library, where among those attending the ceremony was Wells' great-granddaughter.
I'm really trying to not be overwhelmed, but it's difficult. Ida B. Wells had the drive and the tenacity to dedicate almost 50 years of her life fighting for African Americans to have equal opportunity to seek life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in this country.
Ida B. Wells Barnett was born into slavery in Mississippi in 1862. She later became an anti-lynching crusader and journalist working in Chicago alongside her husband, attorney Ferdinand Barnett. She died here in 1931. In the forecast tonight, the Chicago area is once again under a winter weather advisory until 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Expect snow mixed with freezing rain and sleet overnight, with as much as 3 to 6 inches of accumulation north of the city. The low temperature tonight around 30. Tomorrow, the wintry mix continues throughout the area with a high of 34. And as a reminder, you can get Chicago Tonight streamed on Facebook, YouTube, and our website, WTTW.com/news. You can also watch via podcast and the PBS video app. And now, Phil, back to you.
Thanks, Eddie. Former Chicago police officer Jason Van Dyke was sentenced to less than 7 years in prison for killing Laquan McDonald. But that could change if the Illinois Supreme Court finds that sentencing to be illegal. Today, the Illinois Attorney General and the special prosecutor in the Van Dyke case announced their petition for a writ of mandamus. With that, they're seeking to challenge the legality of Van Dyke's 81 months of prison time, that is. The move comes after cries of foul from community activists and Laquan McDonald's family members over that sentence. Joining us now are those challengers, Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul and Kane County State's Attorney Joseph McMahon, who served as the special prosecutor in the Van Dyke murder trial. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. Attorney General Raoul, first of all, basic question, what is a writ of mandamus? And is that the way you pronounce it?
Yeah, well, it's probably been pronounced in varied ways by different people, but that's the way I pronounce it.
All right.
It's basically petitioning the Supreme Court to order a public official to do what they're lawfully obliged to do.
And in this case, you're asking the Supreme Court to order the trial judge to resentence Jason Van Dyke. How come?
To resentence Jason Van Dyke in accordance with the law. And that's the critical point here. It's not, many people are focused on the length of sentence. What I believe Mr. McMahon and myself are focusing on is whether or not the sentence was rendered in accordance with the law. In other words, there were two charges that he was convicted on, aggravated battery with a firearm and second-degree murder. He was sentenced on the second-degree murder count. The law would dictate, we believe, that he should have been sentenced on the ag-bat with a firearm count. There were 16 such counts.
Excuse me, Joseph McMahon, as you know, the judge himself addressed this issue of which of those Jason Van Dyke should have been sentenced under, and he said that it was common sense that killing someone with a gun is more serious than assaulting someone with a gun. To the average person might think, yeah, killing somebody with a gun is worse than assaulting somebody with a gun, and in fact, he was sentenced for killing somebody with a gun. Why was that the wrong thing for the judge to do?
So what this petition asks the Supreme Court to do is to look at legally which offense is more serious. And under the law, the aggravated battery count is more serious because it carries a potentially longer prison sentence. Common sense perspective, absolutely, it makes sense that if somebody is convicted of murder or some type of murder offense, that would be more serious than aggravated battery. But legally, what we have to look at, and what we have argued to the Illinois Supreme Court, is that because the sentencing range for the aggravated battery counts is longer, that is in fact the more serious offense that he was convicted of.
Well, as you know, Jason Van Dyke's appellate lawyers see it differently. Let's listen to what they had to say.
There's not a person watching this newscast today that would think that shooting someone was less serious than shooting and killing someone. In essence, what the special prosecutor and the attorney general are arguing today is that the judge erred when he sentenced Mr. Van Dyke on second-degree murder, and he should have sentenced him on aggravated battery because, they're arguing, aggravated battery is more serious than second-degree murder. That's a ludicrous conclusion, and the law doesn't support it.
Kwame Raoul, if what the judge did was clearly illegal, why did he do it?
I can't explain what the judge may have been thinking at the time, but the judge himself relied on a dissenting opinion in the People v. Lee case, and that's unusual for one to decide on a lone dissenting opinion to render their decision.
And give me a bullet point on what the Lee case was.
Well, People v. Lee dealt, ironically, with these exact same charges. It was second-degree murder and agbat with a firearm charge. So they were forced to make a decision as to which was the more serious count, and they chose agbat with a firearm. So rarely do you have cases that are so directly on point with regards to the very specific juxtaposition of the two charges.
Justice McMahon, you said that one of the reasons you consider the aggravated battery to be a more serious charge is because the sentence is potentially longer. Is that in and of itself what differentiates a crime that is more serious from one that is less serious, the length of the sentence?
Well, that's one of the significant factors that the Illinois Supreme Court in that People versus Lee decision relied on. They looked at the potential sentencing range of those two types of offenses, and they looked at the legislative intent when they adopted those offenses and assigned a sentencing category to each crime. And the Supreme Court said that under those circumstances in the Lee case, that aggravated battery with a firearm is more serious than second-degree murder. Now, Judge Gaughan reviewed that. He addressed some of those arguments that we made at the sentencing hearing, and he found some distinguishing factors in the Van Dyke case that he relied on for entering his sentence. But the Illinois Supreme Court has ruled in that Lee case, as the Attorney General indicated, that the aggravated battery charge is the more serious, and that's why we have asked the Supreme Court to review this and either send it back or provide further clarification on that issue.
Kwame Mayoral will say that your petition to the Supreme Court is granted. The case goes back to the sentencing judge, back to the trial judge. What kind of sentence would you like to see? What kind of sentence do you think is more appropriate?
One that is based on the agbat with a firearm counts as mandated by the law. I yield to the discretion of the trial judge. A trial judge's discretion in sentencing ought to be afforded great deference. So this is not a question of what Kwame Raoul thinks is the appropriate length of sentence. I wasn't sitting as a judge listening to the facts and witnessing the witnesses testify and taking all that into account. That's why a trial judge's decision is to be afforded deference. However, that trial judge must do it consistent with the law, as the legislature has set it out and as the Supreme Court has interpreted it.
Justice McMahon, my understanding is that it could go back to the trial judge, and he could, in fact, say, "All right, fine, I made a mistake. I should sentence based on aggravated battery instead of the killing." Isn't it possible that the sentence could essentially be pretty similar to what he's already received, what Jason Van Dyke has already received?
It could be, and the point of this is to have the law followed in this case. It's not so much about what the ultimate sentence is. Judge Gaughan's decision is entitled to great deference, and he's entitled to that. He sat through the facts of this case. He watched the trial. He listened to the witnesses at the sentencing hearing. So ultimately his decision as to the number will be a decision that he gets to arrive at.
Because didn't he signal, for all intents and purposes, that he did not think that a lengthy sentence was appropriate?
I think that's a fair interpretation of what his sentence was, yes.
Kwame Raoul, Van Dyke's attorneys are saying this is a political move, that it was an issue in your campaign. Why are you getting involved?
It is my constitutional duty to get involved. As the Attorney General, it's my constitutional duty to represent the people of the state of Illinois before the Supreme Court. And if I see that the law is not being followed, it is my responsibility to do so. I think I should be very clear about that. I preside over an office with 400 lawyers. My lawyers were looking at this case 4 days after I took the oath of office, not by my direction, because it's their responsibility to do so, not only in this case, but in many other cases. And so they on their own started looking into this, and days after they approached me about it.
Justice McMahon, when the sentencing, correct me if I'm wrong, but when the sentence came down, you accepted it, you expressed no criticism of the judge or of the sentence. Why did you change your mind?
So this isn't a criticism of the judge. This is an attempt to ask the Supreme Court to order the judge to do something that he is required to do by law. Ultimately, the length of the sentence, that's going to be his decision. And
but why did you change your mind?
I really haven't changed my mind. I've had the benefit since the sentencing in January to look at how he was sentenced and how the law applies to the facts of this case. We were aware of the Lee case at the time of the sentencing. We argued the Lee case during the sentencing hearing, the Lee case and some of the other cases that we have cited in our petition for writ of mandamus. But ultimately, this is about seeing this case through to the right outcome and asking the Supreme Court to review the sentence and how the sentence was imposed, I think is an important message to send on this case, of course, but to the community as well, that we are going to see this case through to its end and make sure that it was done the right way.
Gentlemen, that's where we'll have to leave it. Kwame Raoul, Joseph McMahon, thank you both for being here. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
And up next, a look at Chicago's early voter turnout and the latest in the race for mayor.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by the City Club of Chicago.
Smart people may disagree about what makes a great city, but part of what makes Chicago great is that we don't have to agree. To run a city like ours, a lot of issues come up. The City Club of Chicago is a place to debate those issues and hear from the men and women who shape the policies, lead the industries, and tell the stories that define our city. For the free and open exchange of ideas, the City Club of Chicago.
Well, it's T-minus 2 weeks until the citywide elections, including the election for Chicago mayor and city council members. Today, early voting began in all of the city's 50 wards. Paris Schutz has the latest on where the campaigns stand right now. Paris.
51 sites in total, Phil, to early vote, including that Loop Super site at 175 West Washington. They opened today. They'll be open for the next few weeks. So there's one location in all of the 50 wards. Many of the mayoral candidates spent the morning casting their ballots in different precincts. Beyond that, it was a very slow trickle of voters, perhaps many of them still trying to sort through this field of 14 candidates. And the Chicago Elections Board says that the beauty of early voting is that it's more convenient to the voter than waiting all the way till Election Day.
Any Chicago voter can use any one of the sites. So if you're out running errands, if you're working, if you're doing something and you're away from your home, you can use any one of our locations. All are open 9 to 5 Monday through Saturday, and on Sundays from 10 to 4.
Paris, some of the campaigns have issued new numbers as far as campaign fundraising goes. What does it look like?
Well, Bill Daley reported a number today. He's raised more than anyone else in this field, but he's received criticism of late from his rivals of running what they call Rose Garden strategy. Last Thursday, he backed out of this debate here on Fox 32, a televised debate. It was the same day a Tribune investigation had come out talking about how he had received inside help when trying to pass his insurance exam many, many years ago. Daley then appeared on Friday night with some of the other rivals in the campaign. We saw there just for a second another forum today with 4 of the mayoral candidates. It was a forum on early childhood education. There's another forum tomorrow, Phil. There sometimes 1 and 2 forums every day here. It's hard to keep track of it. In terms of the money, Preckwinkle is second in this fundraising race. She's received a lot of her money from public employee unions like SEIU. Also last week, Lori Lightfoot got news that she is the endorsed candidate of the Chicago Sun-Times editorial board. And there have been 2 polls that have come out in the last week. They show very, very different results, and I don't know that I want to talk about any of the specific results because the margin of error sort of, well, the totals are so close that they cover the margin of error, so it's hard to know really who's ahead. I think what we can say definitively about these polls is clearly no one will get the 50% plus 1 to avoid a runoff. That's something that we can bank on. In fact, no one might get any more than 15%, and there might be a cluster of people around 12 to 15%. So that's what makes this race so extraordinary.
And in the scenario you're talking about, it's the top 2 vote getters.
Top 2 vote getters will move on to the runoff, which takes place early April.
And that's if the top two candidates get 10 or 11%. It doesn't matter.
It could very well happen.
Any indication what the turnout might be? What are you hearing from election officials?
The turnout has been very low. There's been early voting in that Loop super site since late January. The turnout is in the hundreds. When you can think about a city of 2.6 million people, obviously fewer than that are registered voters. That's a minuscule portion of the electorate, but that does not mean that turnout ultimately is going to be low. The election board's Jim Allen points to some other indicators that signal turnout might actually be relatively high once all is said and done.
Voter interest is very strong. We've already more than doubled our vote-by-mail applications for either 2011 or 2015. We've got 50,000 people who've applied to vote by mail. In those previous elections, it was more like 22,000. So people are definitely engaged and tuned in, but they're kind of wanting to, make up their mind when they feel like they've got a solid choice.
Another issue that has been brought to our attention by voters in this campaign are the texts that everybody is receiving from campaigns like the Chico campaign or the Enya or Lightfoot or Vallis campaigns, plus some aldermanic campaigns. We spoke with the Illinois State Board of Elections, and they say that this is nothing more than a nuisance. There's nothing illegal or untoward here. Campaigns get someone's phone number from a database of registered voters. So if you have registered to vote, your information is in this database. The only thing that could be untoward or illegal is if there's a third party selling this information, which there's no evidence that that's going on right now. And of course, if you don't like the texts that you're getting, you can just simply text back stop, and ostensibly you will stop receiving those texts. I've spoken with a couple different campaigns who've said they've used this whole idea of direct texting judiciously because they found that the responses that they get aren't necessarily the nicest responses. So perhaps it annoys more people than it turns on. And I want to remind everyone that we will have our candidate forums here on Chicago Tonight, starting on Thursday with a panel featuring Bob Fioretti, John Kozlar, We Think Jerry Joyce, and Neil Salas Griffin. So that's Thursday night, of course, next Monday and Tuesday as well.
Paris, thank you. And want to learn more about where the mayoral candidates stand on the issues? Head to our website. There you'll find the candidates' positions on specific issues facing the city like crime, pensions, education, ethics, and more. That's at WTTW.com/votersguide. Still to come on Chicago Tonight, will hot White Sox minor leaguer Eloy Jimenez make a major impact on the big league club? Sox announcer Jason Benetti tells us what he thinks. Chicago's historical influence on an enduring design style, plus overlooked graphic art by African-American designers. And a photography exhibit tells the harrowing and inspiring stories of refugees from around the world. But first, Carol Marine and what some Illinois lawmakers think is ahead for the state. Carol.
Thank you, Phil. As Governor J.B. Pritzker prepares for his first budget address next week, his administration has released a study called Digging Out the Rauner Wreckage Report. It details an estimated $3.2 billion budget deficit, a looming $9.2 billion pension bill due next year, and the state's unpaid backlog of bills, which is more than $7 billion. How will lawmakers work with the new governor to tackle these issues? Joining us to help sort it out and look for some possible solutions, new House Majority Leader, State Representative Greg Harris, who represents Chicago's North Side, and Deputy Minority Leader, State Representative Tom Demmer, who represents an area about 100 miles west of Chicago that includes Hillcrest and Dixon. Welcome, both of you. So let's start this way. The budget deficit is estimated at $3.2 billion. Governor Pritzker says it's worse than he imagined. Isn't that what every incoming new governor always says about the past?
Well, this year, though, we've had 2 years of the last 4 with no budget under Governor Rauner. We have $500 million in additional obligations because of contractual payments to state workers that Governor Rauner refused to make. So I think arguably we're in a far worse situation. And now I think all of our jobs, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, whether you're from Chicago or the suburbs or further south, our job now is to find a way to fix that.
So Representative Demmer, the GOP is urging a balanced budget, but in truth, isn't that what the GOP always urges and it doesn't work out?
Oh, it's absolutely what we always urge, and had we enacted balanced budgets through the years, we might not find ourselves in a position where we were so far behind on a backlog of unpaid bills, unpaid pension liabilities. Part of this report is sort of a recognition of what we've been saying for several years, that we have huge systemic problems that are long-running and that put the state in a difficult position with every single budget year that we encounter.
So the Civic Committee of the Commercial Club issued what for some people was just a staggering statement. These are the titans of business. These are the people who run the biggest enterprises in the state, and they came out and said the income tax rate needs to be hiked to 5.95% from 4.95%, and the corporate rate has to be hiked from 7 to 8%. These are not tax and spend liberals. And the reaction on your side of the aisle?
Well, I think that it just shows, that serious thinking people realize the depth of the problem we're in and that there are not going to be any easy solutions to this. I think the governor's transition report and what the Civic Committee said also tell us that we're not going to get out of this in 1 year. This is going to be a sustained effort over the next couple years to repair the damage done in the last 4.
Representative Demmer, your side of the aisle doesn't like this at all, correct? But these are pretty Republican guys saying it.
Well, sure. First, we're invested in trying to find a bipartisan solution for this, but we also know that the short answer has been for the last several years, just raise taxes, just raise taxes, just raise taxes, and we'll be out of this. If that was the answer, the tax hike from 2011 would have worked, the tax hike from 2015 would have worked. We need to find a way that we can put some spending restraints in place. At the same time that you're hearing these proposals for increased taxes, you're also hearing not just a proposal to close what the deficit is for next year, but hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in new obligations. We have to be realistic about what our resources are, and we can't get out ahead of ourselves by spending to the point that the only way we can pivot is back to a tax increase.
And in fairness to the Civic Committee, they are suggesting about $2 billion in spending cuts as well, correct?
Yes, yeah.
So how bipartisan is it these days? I mean, it was fractious and awful for the last 4 years between the two sides. Governor Pritzker has pledged bipartisanship, but is it truly a new day in that regard?
Well, for Leader Demmer and myself, it's not necessarily a new day. In the last 2 years, despite the wishes of Governor Rauner, the House Republicans with Representative Demmer leading and me for the House Democrats did work out budget details. And we also worked out a new hospital and health care payment system for $3.5 billion for the state of Illinois. So there have been a lot of examples of bipartisanship. Haven't always gotten a lot of press or a lot of notice, but it's something that we want to keep working on.
And so the truth is, Representative Demmer, the Democrats actually don't need your side of the aisle, right? Because they now have a super majority in both houses. Are the Republicans going to let the Democrats do that lifting, or is there in fact going to be some shared pain in all of this?
We're absolutely willing to work in a bipartisan way to tackle some of these significant issues. Representative Harris gave you a couple examples of some good bipartisan things we've done. I'd add to that the reformed school funding formula was very much a bipartisan effort. I believe, and I think it's the stance of House Republicans, that we get better legislation when we work together in a bipartisan way, and we're really interested in doing that. We have a good opportunity to do that right now, in fact, with the minimum wage bill that's being debated. Governor Pritzker has said time and time again that he's willing to work with Republicans on this, but what we see right now proposed in the minimum wage bill is essentially the same bill that passed a couple years ago. We think there's a real genuine opportunity for both Republicans and Democrats to get together and hammer out some of these big issues.
But in point of fact, it passed the Senate with no Republican votes, right? And so
that's because it was essentially the same plan we saw a few years ago. So if you're serious about having bipartisan negotiation, let's get together and work on a new bill.
So that's a little tricky then. I mean, how do you do that?
Well, the bill that passed both chambers and Tom is right. It did go to the governor, and the governor vetoed it. And this is something that has been talked about for years. A version did pass, and it raises incomes and wages for families all across the state.
Can the state afford that? I mean, in the state that the state is in, can businesses and organizations afford it?
Well, I've heard from quite a few social service providers, nonprofit organizations. They have no idea how they're going to be able to balance their budget with these new requirements. Small businesses across the area have already complained about the high cost of doing business in Illinois. This is yet another pressure on their backs. And add to that what we talked about before. We have a multi-billion-dollar deficit going into the next fiscal year, and this just exacerbates that. This adds to that. And so we really have to take a stand and say, how can the state put together a balanced budget if we're going to spend the entire spring session of the legislature adding to the challenge that we face?
Do either of you have an answer?
I would just say to that the minimum wage has already been increasing in Cook County, and you always hear the arguments, oh my goodness, if you raise workers' pay, then all these businesses are going to shut or leave this state or whatever. We've not seen that. What we've seen is a better quality workforce, people more committed to their jobs, people not shifting jobs, looking for just a little bit higher pay. It's been good for workers, and it's been good for the state.
So, in terms of new revenue, Governor Pritzker wants a progressive income tax. That can't happen quickly. That might not even happen in a first term, assuming he has more than one term to do this. What are the revenue measures either of you are proposing?
I can tell you that I've already introduced legislation to close corporate tax loopholes on companies that hold their money in offshore tax havens. So I think closing corporate tax loopholes to be sure people pay their fair share are a good idea. I also think we do not as good a job as we should in attracting federal match. I think there's hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of federal matching revenue that we could bring into the state under our current expenditure schemes, which we just have not taken advantage of.
Representative Demmer, where do you see money coming in?
I agree with Leader Harris on the idea that we need to maximize the amount of money we're getting from the federal government. I think in addition to that, we had a recent Supreme Court case that opened the door for sports betting in the state of Illinois. And I think that's a place where you could see Republicans and Democrats come together to capture some new revenue.
Casinos seem to be kind of a dead idea, don't they? I mean, that's been thrown around, but there seems to be a shrinking market for what it produces.
Well, I think that there's a set amount of money that's available for gaming revenue, and that people choose different ways to do it if they're gamers. And sports betting, online betting, different types of things are out there, and we just need to figure out as a state how to maximize the revenue we bring in. Right now, the tax rates on them are a little bit disparate.
So voters are really tired of everybody fighting, and they're tired of nothing getting done. Is this honestly a new day for the legislature, or maybe not so much?
Well, there are sort of mixed signals in that regard right now. I think that what will determine that is what path we have going forward. As you mentioned, Democrats are in the supermajority in both the House and the Senate, newly elected governor and slate of constitutional officers. We need to see whether there's a willingness to put aside some of those partisan identifiers and work together in a collaborative way in Springfield. We're certainly willing to engage on those issues, and we really hope that there's an opportunity for the voice of Republicans and the voice of millions of Illinoisans who elected us to represent them in the General Assembly, that we can have a seat at that table.
You think so, Representative Harris? Do you think that's really happening?
I hope so too, and I think we've certainly worked very well together along with the Senate on things, and I hope that movement can continue on into the next couple of years.
Representative Greg Harris, Representative Tom Demmer, thank you very much for joining us on Chicago Tonight. Drive safely in the snow.
Thank you, Carol.
Phil, we go back to you.
Thanks, Carol. Will superstar infielder Manny Machado end up in a White Sox uniform? Will prized outfield prospect Eloy Jimenez be the American League Rookie of the Year? Those are just a few of the questions Sox fans are wondering about as the team gets ready for the start of spring training this week. Here to help us answer those questions and more is Chicago White Sox broadcaster Jason Benetti, who is now entering his 4th season announcing games for the Southsiders. Jason, welcome to Chicago Tonight.
Hi, Phil. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Listen, everyone wants to know the answer to the question. This has been all over the papers for weeks now. Is Manny Machado going to end up on the South Side?
Usually when people ask me that question, they feign interest in something else about me. and don't just dive in. So I appreciate you just being direct. Like somebody will say like, oh, what kind of pizza do you have there? Is Manny Machado coming to the Sox?
No. We cut to the chase here.
Yeah, I like that. The Sox have made their offer. They made a very strong pitch. As people know, there are a couple of folks associated with Manny Machado as well that have joined up with the team, whether for that reason or otherwise. The Sox feel like they've done everything that they can to get him here. Will he be here? I would have thought we would have had the answer to that question, and will Bryce Harper be in any of other 3-4 ports of call already? Free agency has gotten Ben-Hur-like over the past couple of years. It is a chariot race to figure out who's going to play where. And I know baseball fans are frustrated. It's much more of a collective bargaining thing than it is an indication of these free agents and their decisions. It also happens that you got Harper and Machado together, and they each want the larger contract. So neither wants to move first, I think. The Giants have evidently just jumped in on Bryce Harper, according to rumors. So there are other teams.
Because they want the other guy to go first so they can leapfrog on that.
Yeah.
And just get a sense of where the market is.
Yeah, and then, you know, like on Price is Right, go a dollar over and make sure they have the largest contract. I think each agent wants to make sure they're doing right by their players. So I feel like the Sox have a strong shot at Manny Machado. I really do. But I would have thought the answer would have been here by now.
I see. Well, tell us about Eloy Jimenez. He's the Sox top prospect who's likely to join the team in May. Is he as good as advertised?
Yeah. Of all of the best player in Major League Baseball, we had a season ticket holder event before Sox Fest. I brought him up on the stage. I was asking each player one question, and I said, what do you expect this season? And he said, I expect to be the American League Rookie of the Year.
Tell us about him. Give us, because some people, this may be a new name to them.
Yeah, so the Sox got him in the trade for Jose Quintana with the Cubs a couple of years ago, which I know there's some teeth grating going on with Cubs fans because he left, but he's a huge physical specimen, very young guy, and it has a prowess for hitting home runs off of light poles. He's done that twice in the minor leagues already. The belief is that he will be a major leaguer at some point this season, whether it's a couple weeks into the year or a month into the season. He is as impressive of a young player total makeup-wise, as I've seen traveling through the minors or now the majors for 4 years.
There's a pitcher named Dylan Cease, who was named Minor League Pitcher of the Year. Tell us about Dylan Cease. Who is he?
Dylan Cease is a right-hand pitcher who was in that same trade for Jose Quintana, so he came over with Eloy Jimenez. He is a really thoughtful guy. You talk about what's between the ears for a pitcher. I went down to Winston-Salem last year. He was pitching an A-ball and interviewed him. We chatted for 10, 15 minutes. I've gotten to know him some. He's big into yoga. He's big into meditation. He's very well centered on the mound. Father is a lawyer. He comes from a very grounded, centered, smart family. And he has the mental makeup of somebody who could also be a star. And also, he happens to be somebody in possession of a cannon for a right arm as well. So those two guys are as impressive to me as anybody in the minor league system.
On another note, you have a series of cartoon videos of yourself online called Awkward Moments with Jason Benetti, and let's take a look at one of them.
Hi, I'm Jason Benetti, your friendly Chicago TV sports announcer with Awkward Moments, brought to you by the Cerebral Palsy Foundation. Hey, you like movies? I like movies. You like popcorn? I like popcorn. While you're ordering your popcorn, do you have 5-year-olds look at you and ask their mother, hey, what's wrong with that man? You don't. I do. Happens all the time. And the mom usually...
Give us some background for why these videos, there's 5 of these cartoons. What is the point of them?
So I have cerebral palsy. I don't know how many people know that. The cartoon shows me walking and shows my eyes, which kind of have their own mind. And the idea is a lot of charities and a lot of nonprofits deal with fighting a disease or fighting a disorder. For me, there are going to be people living with disease or disorder or being different, whether it's sexual orientation, disability, race, whatever it might be. the idea is you're going to have people react to you in strange ways sometimes. They're going to be quizzical, or they're just going to be confused, or they're just going to say something that's a little odd for them even in the moment because they've never seen somebody like you. And I've learned over time that getting angry about it can be taxing on a person. And sometimes just like laughing and sharing a moment with that person and getting them to understand where you're coming from and maybe to help them deal with it next time, that's where it comes from in my heart and in the Cerebral Palsy Foundation's heart as well.
What kind of feedback have you gotten to these cartoons?
Very nice. Some of my friends say that there are many more awkward moments that I've created, and I've been a cartoon for all of 35 years, but those are just the snarky people. I've had so many people who, I was doing a basketball game at Ohio State last week, and one of the members of our crew who I'd worked with before came up to me and said, hey, I really appreciate these awkward moment spots. My daughter, who we've adopted, has CP, and it kind of helps us understand what we're going to see and how to react. So it warms my heart, really.
Let's get back to baseball. How well do you think the Sox are going to do in 2019?
Is Manny Machado going to be here? Like I get to ask somebody else.
Isn't that how we started this conversation?
That's the amazing thing, is it's so hard to judge because say Machado shows up or Bryce Harper shows up, it completely alters the roster so much. The one thing that I know is the American League Central is mostly in rebuild mode. Minnesota is, Detroit is, Kansas City is, and the Indians were talking about trading some of their frontline starting pitchers. I think the Sox have an opening here in the next couple years where the division is going to be softer than some in Major League Baseball. So I feel like it's going to be an improvement from last year, and depending on the personnel, maybe a significant rocket ship type improvement.
We'll have to have you back, especially if that rocket ship takes off, Jason. Thank you.
Love to.
And you can read more of Jason's thoughts about the upcoming season as well as those of Cubs broadcaster Len Casper on our website. A couple of shows at local museums embrace the rich history of design in Chicago. Chicago Tonight recently visited before they opened to the public for a streamlined look at the city's influential artists and designers. Here's Brandis Friedman with another look.
At the Chicago History Museum, the exhibition Modern by Design explores the city's role in shaping a beloved and enduring style.
Streamlined design emerged as a really popular style in the Great Depression, and it is aerodynamic in form. It expresses optimism, a desire for speed and efficiency that really suited modern-day life. There's a natural quality to it as well. And this design style really appealed to mass America. It was modern, but not excessively modern. It was a comfortable modern.
The sleek style really blossomed during the Century of Progress, Chicago's World's Fair of 1933 and 1934.
The fair introduced modern design to America on a grand scale. It showcased modern architecture, streamlined products, modern graphic design, modern interior design. And with all that going on, it made a real impression on the people who visited the fair. 40 million people came to Chicago over those 2 years to see the World's Fair, and they came away with a new vision of what America could look like.
Chicago area companies including Radio Flyer, Zenith Radio, and Shure Microphones contributed to the popularity of the design, which was incorporated into everything from toys to coffee makers to baby coaches. At the Chicago Cultural Center, another new exhibition takes a broad view of the many contributions of African American designers in Chicago. Like the show at the History Museum, it is presented by the Chicago-based Terra Foundation for American Art, part of their year-long initiative, Art Design Chicago. At the Cultural Center, cartoon illustrations share gallery space with consumer products and even a diorama depicting a pivotal moment in the Revolutionary War.
What's fun about the show is the unexpected. We're very lucky that they were preserved. There were a lot of things that aren't preserved because most of this can be thought of as ephemera. In that way, it's part of our daily lives. Magazines and newspapers, printed books, pamphlets, advertisements pulled out of publications, posters, which were kind of a throwaway object meant to publicize something that was going to come and go.
The exhibition focuses on the wide range of items designed by often unknown African Americans in Chicago from 1900 all the way up to 1980.
It is a kind of time machine here. African American art itself has been overlooked for many years, and the artists and the designers, the creators, were often excluded systematically from the wider art world and the design world. The designers had a lot to contend with. They were working for business people who were selling a product. This was about business and commerce, as well as creating an image of success and prosperity and desire for consumer products in not only the growing African American marketplace, but the market generally.
Back at the Chicago History Museum, some of the lenders gathered for an early preview, including a third-generation farmer from Sterling, Illinois, who loaned a streamlined tractor.
This tractor only has like 15, 18 horsepower, so lawnmowers got that now. I got about 55 of them. And the reason I loan it to her is so that it'll make me room for another tractor.
Chicago's not the only city to make streamlined goods. Many cities did, but Chicago made such a breadth of them because we had such a varied industrial base. And we also had this unsurpassed ability to distribute these goods nationwide. So Chicago became a leader in this movement of streamlined design.
For Chicago Tonight, I'm Brandis Friedman.
The Modern by Design exhibition will be at the Chicago History Museum until December, but that exhibit is temporarily closed because a pipe burst in the cold weather. They hope to reopen the exhibit soon, so be sure to check their website for more information. And African American designers will be at the Chicago Cultural Center through March 3rd, and there's more to see on our website. Refugees have been in the news a lot lately, but mostly in the abstract as part of debates about immigration policy. Now, a photography exhibit in Chicago wants you to get to know some refugees up close. It's called When Home Won't Let You Stay, Stories of Refugees in America. It's on display through February at Unity Chicago in Rogers Park. Joining us now are James Bowie, the photographer who created the exhibit, and Kenny Kanese, a refugee from Burundi, who is one of the subjects of the exhibit. And gentlemen, welcome to Chicago Tonight. James Bowie, you have a background as a photojournalist. You were a newspaper editor. You covered the war in Bosnia. Why photos of refugees in America?
You know, we are continuously creating and recreating our society through the stories we tell of others. And in 2015, there was a very dramatic shift in the stories of others. In particular, the story of American promise vis-a-vis immigrants was beginning to change. The American metaphor of immigrants as a source of hope and inspiration and opportunity was being replaced by a new metaphor of fear and hate and lost opportunity. And so I felt that I wanted to try to make sense of that story and begin to tell that story in new ways. And refugees in particular were important because if we're fearing and hating refugees, we can fear and hate anyone. And so I did what I usually do, is I got in my car with my cameras and started going out and meeting refugees and capturing their story.
We've been looking at some of the images in the exhibit, some of the subjects that you're talking about, but there's one subject, his name is, the person's name is Ahmed Noor. Tell us about Ahmed Noor. He was also a journalist.
Ahmed Noor, like so many of the refugee subjects in the exhibition, is inspiring in many ways. His image is on the screen now. He was a journalist.
The gentleman right here?
Correct. Mm-hmm. He was a journalist working in Somalia, committed to what was happening to his country, to the extent that because of the danger that he was in, he would live at the office and sleep there, and his wife and children were living out in the countryside to keep them safe. And one day, his news director got assassinated, and he received a message that said, "You're next." and he literally jumped up with the clothes on his back and drove to the airport and flew to the only place that would let him in without papers, which was Uganda. And he escaped and didn't see his family again for 5 years until they were eventually reunited.
Kenny Kenese, you were a 20-year-old college student when you escaped a massacre and left Burundi in 1994, and the following 10 years includes many really horrific stories of imprisonment and torture. But you spent 1 year alone in the jungle. How were you able to survive there?
That's a good question. It was very traumatic to live in the jungle without any human being. And when you are living in a situation like that, our body are very interesting. You start adapting based to the situation you are living in. I was just watching what other animals are doing. For example, if I want to eat a fruit, I don't know which kind of fruit I can eat because most are poisonous. But the monkey was able to take a fruit and bite and throw it away. That means I cannot eat it. But when the fruit is eatable, the monkey shook the tree because I cannot go up.
So you would watch what the animals would eat, and if they ate it, then it was then you would eat it as well.
Yeah, that was the way I survived.
But you must have gotten very lonely in that year.
Yeah, because I don't have another option. And I don't know how to get out from that jungle. So I just wait to die. That's only one thing I had. But God helped me to get out there because of hunters who come to hunt there and found me there.
So some hunters found you?
Yeah, found me there and take them to their own village.
But that was not the end of your story, and I know it's a long one. Yeah. James Boyd, tell us about another subject named Zaina?
Zaina.
Zaina, thank you.
Zaina was a really important inspiration for the whole project. Zaina is a young woman living in North Minneapolis, and as a young girl, she was living in Baghdad, and she was one day out playing in the yard, and militia soldiers showed up and killed her uncle in front of her. And then shortly thereafter, they received a note under their door that said the family needed to be out in 72 hours or they would be killed. And so she experienced this incredible trauma in her life to the point that now she's a woman of very few words. And so when I met her, I was interviewing her, and I interviewed her for over a half an hour. And she spoke about 4 sentences in the entire half hour. For her, that was an incredibly heroic act for her to be able to share that story and to share it at all. But as a journalist, it kind of held me because I felt that I failed. I felt that I didn't do my job because I've got so little from this interview. But then I very quickly realized that those few sentences that she said it all.
And let's take a look at them. And what she told you was, I was 12 years old. All I remember is the shouting, and I see my uncle killed. That's all. And my mother screaming. Why only that? And that's the case with all of your pictures. It's very spare, just 2, 3, 4 sentences maybe.
Yeah. So the project, I really had to figure out a language that I could communicate about a divisive subject to the country as a whole. And that we live in this age now in which information is being weaponized. And it seems the more information we have, the more it becomes the resource for division. And so I was looking for that language, and Zaina gave it to me. And in her inability to explain her story, as I was literally walking away to my car, it's dejected because I thought I didn't have a story, I realized that those few words said it all. And the reason they said it all is because they spoke to my empathetic imagination. And that when I heard her story, I knew my own story, which was that when I was a teenager, my father went missing and we couldn't find him. And in the middle of the night, we got the phone call that my father had been found dead. And my mother screamed. And in that scream, my life is similar to Zaina's life, that our empathy and our understanding of each other could connect us. And so that ability to connect people through empathy became the basis of the project. And so that's why I use very spare photos and these very spare, what I consider found poems, to go along with them.
Kenny, we're almost out of time, but what do you hope people take away from this exhibit?
Actually, people should understand the refugee. There are people who come to the country not to take away from something, but look for safety. The safety is something any refugee is looking for because he has already lost his own home. So that's a new home. Chicago, it's my home. That's where I consider that my second place I born. So I want everyone to have that kind of relationship, that feelings that we are brother and sisters and helping each other in different way, rather than thinking that I come to take away the job or anything. It just come to, I have a knowledge and the skills which I can share with the community so that they can get something from me, I can get also something from them.
James Bowie, Kenny Kennesey, thank you both for being here. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Again, the exhibit is called When Home Won't Let You Stay, Stories of Refugees in America. It's at Unity Chicago in Rogers Park through February. This Wednesday night, James Bowie and Ken Kennesey will be there to lead a community conversation on the refugee experience. You can find out more and see a slideshow on our website. And that is our show for this Monday night. Don't forget to stay connected with us by signing up for our daily briefing and join us tomorrow night live at 7. How NASA hopes studies of mice in space by Northwestern researchers could help pave the way for a human colony on Mars. And the Illinois Holocaust Museum and a New Orleans history group tell the story of the American slave trade. And the countdown is on, the first of 3 Chicago Tonight mayoral candidate forums is just 3 days away. Be sure to join us here on Thursday and again next Monday and Tuesday to hear from all the candidates. Next week's programs can also be heard live on the radio on WBEZ 91.5 FM, and it can all be seen online on WTTW.com as well as on Facebook and YouTube. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Phil Ponce, and I thank you for watching. Good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, proud sponsors of the National Hellenic Museum's Trial of Hippocrates on February 20th, where Robert Clifford will be participating in the open to the public mock trial.